They said they did the right thing to go for that.
Oh, I don't agree. Do you agree?
Yep,
It still hurts.
because 51 February, if you don't make it, you're done.
Good afternoon and welcome to this agenda review meeting of the Nacogdoches Independent School District Board of Trustees. Let the record show that a quorum of the board is present and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act. Board member Dr. T.C. Groman is unable to attend the meeting today. I'd like to remind everyone that all items on the agenda are for discussion only. No action will be taken at this meeting. Please join us in turning your cell phones to a silent mode. We didn't receive any request to address the board as outlined in the meeting notice as it relates to public comment. So at this time, we'll dive right into the consent agenda. And Ms. Barbarick, I think we have like five or six items that's you are the presenter for. So if you'll take us through it, we're all ears.
Good afternoon, President Irvin, board members, Dr. Trujillo. So I'd like to begin with our budget amendments. They start on page 116 of board reports. The first budget amendment is in reference to our student nutrition fund. We received a grant, an equipment grant, so we are recording the revenues and the expenses for that grant. Item B, this one is an effort to protect our fund balance. We are requesting to transfer $11,916,399 to the local capital projects fund for future projects. This amount is equal to the amount of fund balance that we grew this year. Item C, budget funds received from 2017 property value study audit and its associated expense to perform the audit. So we have a revenue of $8,132 and an expense of the same amount. Item D, increase the earnings on investments budget and apply the increase to our property and casualty insurance increase in rates. So with the onboarding of our new buildings, as well as cost of living increased, our property insurance rose significantly. So I'm asking to apply that $219,999 to go towards that. Our interest is earning much better, and this will be able to cover that. Item E, increase budget for donated funds for athletics for $72. Item F, budget funds received for insurance claim on transportation vehicle, $19,769. Item G, pull funds from fund balance to purchase 2 additional white fleet vehicles. Since COVID, it has been difficult to purchase vehicles due to the lack of supply, and the funds that were pulled in the past 3 years have not been able to be utilized. We do have one vehicle that is, we procured. The other one we are still on the lookout for. Item H, pull funds from fund balance to replace 5 buses, replace 1 dedicated bus, and buy 1 additional Dragon Express. This is at $885,000. Our bus fleet has been neglected, and this will replace 5 of our oldest buses, which are approximately 15 years old. I, pull funds from fund balance to purchase a district-wide radio system for $250,000. This would allow district-wide a common radio system for communication for emergency purposes.
May I ask? On item I, which is radio, there is no question in my mind that having a radio communication is the most necessary item for any communication on modern time. Building, demolition, security, and all of that. The radios we're buying, I have questions. Are we going to be on the same line with the rest of the community's first responders?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a dedicated line only for NISD's employees as well, or is just the information goes everywhere?
It's dedicated.
There's
To
a
us.
dedicated line?
Yes.
Okay. And the existing radios, what happens to them? Are they going to be distributed among the administrators, or how?
Well, we will be ordering enough radios for administrators and at the DSC, as well as administrators and certain classes on campuses.
Yes.
Existing radios, if they are compliant, that they will work with this new system, we will keep them. Otherwise, we will have to dispose of the other radios if they don't.
Right.
Because then they defeat the purpose of us being able to communicate
Yes.
district-wide.
Like I said, I think it's very necessary to have those radios on modern time. Thank you.
I have this is just me being curious, and so I'm directing this to Dr. Trujillo. The 5 buses we're replacing, what do we do with those? Do we keep them around to cannibalize them, or what? Anybody going to give us?
No,
They will
anytime you take the, and this goes with any of, and it also works for property, is you put it back out, like these buses would go to auction.
Auction, okay.
And then you, or an entity that's out there that's interested, that wants to purchase the vehicle from the school district, but it goes back out, and that's something that our finance folks, and the same thing happens with our white fleet. And we have aged white fleet vehicles, following the guidelines that the state has provided, so they put them back out for auction, and it adds back to the revenue of the district, so it's not just,
Yeah, we're not just
junked.
trashing them.
No, not junked out. They can pick up another life with another entity out there, so,
Okay, thank you.
yes, ma'am.
Just to clarify, get the cobweb off of my head, the white fleet means it's vehicles that the school uses for different departments?
Yes, sir. White fleet would be the Suburbans, a pickup truck, the maintenance and operations with Rob and his team. So those are vehicles that we would be putting in place.
I always didn't know that. I'm just learning. What is that? It was later on. I mean, we have to come back to it. A black bus. What is that?
That is it's not a yellow bus, it's the black one, the ones that we use for longer distance.
Dedicated those buses? Is
These
that-
are the big Dragon bus.
Okay, that's what we'll call
Yes.
black bus. Okay.
Any other questions on budget amendments?
No, ma'am.
All right, next, I would like to move on to our donations under $2,500 on page 25. We have several $100 donations to the high school French club from Holigan Counseling and Wellness, Aaron Wyndham Fitness, Loblolly Properties, Rachel Perry Insurance, Nacogdoches Dental, and Ted Smith State Farm. We also have non-cash donations to Nettie Marshall Early Childhood Center, as well as cash of $200 from Texas Farm Bureau, $32.63 for supplies from Kroger, $34.64, same thing, and $200 from Mario Wesley and Associates Real Estate. We have a donation to athletics, boys basketball and football banner sponsorship, $1,500 from Rex Perry Autoplex. Reggae had donations of pizza and prizes from Serve Pro, and the high school received an American flag from Woodman Life. Next on the agenda is the investment report, which you'll find on page 27. You'll find our earnings are doing quite well. In general fund investments, we're looking at a little over $79,000 for the month, $6,000 for debt service, and $43,000 for bond.
What is our fund balance? Is it the 35?
That was our beginning fund balance last year. It's now larger than that. It's at 46 million.
The fund balance is?
Yes.
Okay.
And part of that, when you look at the fund balances, we had positions that through ESSER and through funds that we weren't able to hire. 80% of our budget is staffing. So when you don't, and you put the positions out there and trying to find those positions, they go unfilled, then those funds, they sit there until we find it. The same thing, some of the strategies we used last year was because we were consolidating some of our buildings, we utilized our leadership in different ways. For instance, if you recall, we didn't hire a principal for Nettie. We didn't hire a principal for Mike Moses. We didn't hire a full-time principal for McMichael. Those are also dealing with large salaries. So when you're looking at that, we use the current staff that we have to help fill those voids as we moved into a transition. So when you look at those numbers, when the fund balance grows by 11 million, those are those numbers that we are looking at.
So the 11 million that will be going into capital gains has already been taken away from the fund balance? Or
That is one of my budget amendments this month, to do that,
to take it out?
to move it to a different fund.
Okay, so we'll then be down to like 35.
Yes.
I have one question on the contributions line. Is that moved from somewhere else? Under Texas class investment pool, it says beginning balance and then contribution. Was that brought in from somewhere else or?
As we have cash needs at the district, when we're running short, we pull from investments, and then depending on, we collect taxes, and we get the majority of our taxes at a particular time of year, so then we have a surplus of cash.
Okay.
So we use that for cash flow, and when we don't need as much, we put it in investments, and when we need it, we pull it out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on investments or donations? If not, if you have any other questions on my reports, I'll take them now.
Yes, ma'am. I see that NIU portable toilets expense. Where are we those? Do you have any idea?
Well, once we put an order in, we're put in line to have them built.
Correct.
And it takes several months for them to be built. So
Correct.
that's where they are in the middle of building them right now.
They're coming from Canada, I'm assuming.
Yes, they are.
Okay. And there's 2 units.
Yes.
And do you have any idea is the total cost for those?
Well, we already made one payment on them. I'm trying to remember what the total amount was.
Okay, I see one payment that evidently is $153,554. Is this a portion of that?
Is that what you found on the check register? Or
Yes, no, I see it, assigned fund balance for capital expenditure.
Oh, you've jumped ahead. Okay. That's the future payment.
Okay. Any idea how soon they're going to let us have it?
I believe the building time is 4 to 6 months, and they started the build, I think, about a month ago.
Okay.
We're always at the mercy of, even if they get the material.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the consent business office?
Reverend, we did.
We're good, okay, thank you. So, everybody good? Any questions? Okay. Education advanced? Mr. Martin?
Good afternoon, President Irvin, members of the board, Dr. Trujillo. Administration is recommending renewing our annual subscription for Cardonics. Cardonics is a program that assists our middle and high school principals with efficient and effective staffing and scheduling. Last year was our first year to use Cardonics. Dr. Trujillo, myself, Mr. Autry, and some of his staff, as well as Mr. Fonzie, all met about a month ago to talk about the success and some of the areas of improvement that we could work with using Cardonics. We've got Mr. Autry here, if the board would like to hear from him, but at this point, the administration is recommending renewing that subscription. Be happy to answer any questions you all may have.
I have a question. I remember when we bought this, because I was quite excited, thinking this is going to be a lifesaver. But it was just like 6 months ago. So why are we having to do a renewal at this point for just $2,000 less than what we paid in April?
Was it last April that we purchased?
It was April, yeah.
It's just their renewal.
So we signed on and only got 6 months worth before they had to do it again?
Well, in actuality, we signed on very late last year.
figured, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
We signed on very late. This would be the normal time to sign on for the following school year. But we got on the back end of it last year, so we were
Yeah.
very late when we purchased.
Yeah, oh, bummer,
But we
okay.
didn't lose any service on that.
No, sir.
Well, no, but did we get our money's worth? It's the question. Did we get our money's worth?
This is why we had Mr. Autry come in.
There's no bigger skeptic, because I think everybody is, infomercial salesman. So I was very skeptic, and they said, let's give it a try. And we would just, if they would take $1,000 out of our account, I go, well, for $1,000, I'll try anything. It saved, we would go through it and we would have frustration with it, and then we would call, and then we would figure out, okay, well, it's us. And then we would, every time we had a frustration, it was on our side, what we were doing, not uploading our system every day, so it wasn't speaking to eSchool. But it made scheduling, even though, I'll be honest, we had no clue what we were doing the first year. But we met with the people. They would schedule a meeting, we would meet with them, we would call them, they would get contacts with us right away if we had issues. But it's scheduled very well. I mean, and again, I always do it, paper, pencil, go through it. It messes up, you have to make corrections all the time. What's your conflict report, and then you go back and you make changes. This system helped us to clean up all of our stuff in Teams, all of our classes and everything. It helped us to clean all of that up, so there's no trash in there anymore. It's just, this is what we have and this is what exists. It helps us clean up all of our teachers as well. And it's scheduled, it was very accurate. If you put classes in there, it scheduled it. So our freshmen scheduled it like 96%. So our freshman counselor was completely freed up. I mean, they do a few little changes or adjustments, and then they're free, they're done. I mean, they could do that in easily, in an hour. They were done. Usually when, it'll take them weeks, because we try to get it done 3 weeks before the kids will get the schedule. And they had nothing to do, so it was nice. The sophomores scheduled like at 90%.
Wow.
The juniors were above 80%.
That's pretty good.
And the seniors were less than 70. And everybody will go, well, that's terrible. And it's not good, but it will only schedule, it only schedules those. If you have a hole, then it doesn't schedule everything. So it says that's an error. Well, if a student has early release or late arrival, well, it's telling you there's an error because they don't all have, it scheduled them in, but it's just saying they have an error. So when you take those kids into consideration, I mean, we're above, right at 80-85%. So it saved us a absolute ton of time on the master schedule. And even, we had to, you don't have to run a conflict report anymore. So what will happen is if you're making a schedule, you put all of the courses up, how many you're going to need, you hit a button, it runs it, and then you run a report that says, okay, well, here's all the conflicts. So then you go back and you redo everything. In Cardonics, you set everything, all your teachers, and it has a board. And over here are all of the classes. I know this won't make any sense, but you touch a little chip for a class, and it will tell you, put it here. And it's running all the conflict reports as you're dragging it. And once you have you can do it extremely fast. It's amazing. It saved us so much time. And the counselors so much time.
Yeah, that's the biggie. See, why didn't we hear about the had to have been, huge celebration party the counselors held? Because, I mean, I remember it was always 2 to 3 weeks into the school year before things kind of settled down.
Right, and that was the thing. They didn't have to deal with fixing all the schedules, because we know how it is. They fix all the schedules, and then you have all the requests for change.
Yeah.
They fixed a few, and then they were ready. Okay, what's the change? What's going to be the request? Where's my friend at? I want to take this class now. I mean, we all deal with those things, but it
was literally, we had this conversation, and I wasn't trying to sell the administration this direction, but I saw the potential because, and my rationale was, if anybody drives down one of our campuses and you drive by the high school, drive by the middle school, you're going to notice that the high school principal and the team are still working into the summer with their schedule, trying to get it set up. So prior to the board's approval of this last year in April, I'm not going to say we because I don't have a mouse in my pocket. I had sat down repeatedly to kind of have a conversation with our principals, also with Dr. Hill, about the potential of what this can do for our staff. With apprehension, they decided we will try this. And this year, because of that, my intent was, I got with Mr. Martin, I said, okay, they gave us the year, so we're taking this off the docket. We're not going to commit with this. And I'm going to tell you, within days, I had a scheduled meeting where the counselor and the high school principal wanted to meet face-to-face with me about why are you taking this off. The counselors fell in love with it. When he gives you the numbers about the seniors, the celebration for the first time in the history, from what I'm understanding from the counselors, to get that number that they got was just record-breaking for them to get that as a senior. Our goal is to release our counselors so that they can spend time doing the job and developing their skills to interact with kids on college and career, and also some other counseling, not sit down administratively navigating through the schedule. That can be tasked by a program like this that can provide the support. If I'm not mistaken, because we're jumping in here like we are now, or as early as we are, it would not be inconceivable that we would not be ready with schedules before we even left for the summer.
correct.
So our high school can actually be scheduled before then. So.
That's
Yeah, our
good.
goal is to finish before school starts.
That's,
Except for maybe freshmen, but freshmen are, they're easier to schedule because we know what core classes are going
Yeah.
to be taken and all
they have
this
less,
stuff.
right.
But in January, we're going to start with all of our, course selection guides and our requests for the students. We'll have all of that put in the system. And then we'll start meeting with Cardonics. And we should have we probably will not release their schedules before, but we should have them scheduled before summer starts.
So that kind of leads me to my next question. It sounds like then you're going to have a much more accurate picture of what your staffing needs are going to be, and you'll be able to tell teachers, sorry, we're going to drop one of your biologies and add some,
Right.
okay, that's
And it will
good.
help us too, just like if we're overstaffed somewhere.
Yeah.
So when someone leaves,
Mm-hmm.
you'll know, okay, I need an extra biology teacher.
Mhm.
I don't need a Spanish teacher. So we're good there, I need to hire here. That was very clear with the system.
Okay.
Did-
And, oh, go
Sorry,
ahead.
did the middle school use it last year?
Yeah, I was about to ask.
The middle school did. I don't know how much success they had with it. I don't think Mr. Fonzie worked with it. There was another AP that worked with it. I think they had some difficulties with the system. And I told Mr. Fonzie, what we'll do is we'll all get together and we'll sit there and we'll get them on the screen, Cardonics, when they do their first, they walk you through. They're going to tell you, the first thing we want you to do is get all your course selections in. And then they meet with you, and they set your chips and all of those things. So they'll give you 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get all that done, and then they'll set another meeting, and then you'll go from there. Even down to, we're going to place your, what your non-negotiable classes and where they need to be. You go do that, and then they'll meet a week later, and then they'll talk about your singletons, your doubles, and they'll go from there.
Okay.
But we meet with them every single time when you're doing all of your chip placement and building your schedule.
Mr. Autry, this is Coach Ray. That the schedule is making is a full year, correct? Or
Yes,
a semester?
it's a full year.
Full year.
As long as we put it in there correctly,
Yes.
it will do its job.
Okay.
And we learned a lot.
Yes.
And we know what we're going to do this year. Because every time we came up against a glitch or how something didn't schedule correctly or whatever,
Yes.
we made a note and they would tell us, this is how we can do it and make it work.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Daktronics, Mr. Martin?
Thank you, President Irvin. If I may direct the board's attention to page 65 in your board book. Administration is recommending purchasing Platinum Plus services for our video display board at Nacogdoches High School. This service agreement will be valid through September 30th of 2025. So what this agreement does is just allows us an opportunity to make sure that our video board out at the football stadium is up and running, maintenance as well with it, all bulbs and services included. We'll be happy to answer any question the board may have about this service contract.
I'm reading this and it says, purchase hereby agrees to purchase the services, peripherals, and additional supplies collectively. So they are saying that we will do that and they will provide it for the amount that we're paying them. There won't be any extra cost.
I'm sorry, I
Is that
missed
the way I'm understanding? Well, I just want to make sure, because on this, what you gave us here, the agreement says that we will purchase, that the purchaser will purchase the services and the peripherals and additional supplies collectively, the service as described in attachment A. So that means that we are the ones that are agreeing to pay that, but they're going to provide us with everything that we need with no additional cost. to
Right,
it.
this covers the service, the labor, trip charge, things of that nature,
So there won't be any extra cost other than what we're doing with this.
other than maybe parts.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is a 3-year contract. We'll pay about $11,000 a year over the next 3 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Martin. Reliable Chevrolet, Ms. Barbrick?
So administration is requesting the board approve the purchase of 2 2023 Tahoe police vehicles and 3 2023 Suburbans from Reliable Chevrolet for $227,056.80.
And that price is for, I mean, that's not going to change, it's not going to change with, okay.
No, we already have quotes from them.
Ms. Apt, same thing with this. When we're looking at this, and Chief is here, and she can speak to it, but we have we have some vehicles that really got to come off the docket that are part of our law enforcement. So this would be updating our, and those vehicles would go to auction as well, so similar to what you had asked earlier.
Right, yes.
My question would be, are they going to be equipped with all of the,
Yes.
Good.
Our chief, her response was 2 thumbs up, so the community can know.
right?
Okay.
Thank you. All right, we need to reschedule the January agenda review meeting.
Yes, sir, President Irving and Board, the January 23rd agenda review meeting is scheduled for Monday, January the 16th, which is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The meeting will need to be rescheduled, and in the past practice, we've moved the meeting to the preceding Friday, of February 2023. The date would be Friday, January the 13th at noon. The meeting could also be held on Tuesday, January the 17th. However, that is within the 72-hour posting window for a regular meeting, so no changes could be made to the agenda. So my recommendation would be that we move it to the Friday prior, so that if there's any changes to the agenda, that can be made at that time.
Thank you. All right, we'll move now to the action agenda. First, we'll have the consideration of the annual school district audit for the fiscal year 2021-2022. Ms. Barber.
So what you have in the board book, starting on page 84, is a draft of our annual financial statement. On Thursday, you will have the final when it's presented by Belt Harrison Pahacek. But I would like to just highlight a few items. So on page 113, here you see the balance sheet for the general fund, debt service, capital projects, ESSER, and it continues on the next page. But what I want to point out to you is on the general fund, near the bottom, there is a line item that says total fund balances, and there you will see our $46,644,741 in ending fund balance. Above that, you'll see the commitments that, not the commitments, but the breakdown of what that fund balance is. We have inventory of $269,000, retirement of long-term debt, which is our QSCAD, $6,400,000. Later, we'll be bringing to you the commitment of $625 for the turf field. Here, where you see construction, $14 million, that is an error which will have to be corrected in the final. That amount, $14 million, is actually our 3-month operating expenditures that is required by board policy. And then we have the $2.6 million for capital expenditures, $2.3 million for the incentives that you already approved earlier in the year, and then an unassigned fund balance of $19,500,000. Then on page 164, this is a schedule of our general fund actuals versus budget, and what you will see in the final column, we were within budget in all the function codes, which is what you approve in the budget, and what is, keeps us from having one of, it could result in a audit finding if you overspend, and we did not. Then on page 181, I gave you the wrong page. Let's see. Page 190. This is our budget versus actual for student nutrition. Also want to point out to you that on the ending fund balance, they have $2,114,220. You will find that will be a comment in the management letter that they have an excessive fund balance. Again, we are desperately trying to spend those funds. We are buying equipment, but the equipment doesn't come in. She's also having difficulty hiring staff, and so that results in us not being able to spend all the funds that we planned on spending. But again, she is buying more equipment, and again, though, she's having difficulty hiring staff, but doing the best we can to spend those funds. And then on page 193, sorry, 192 is our debt service fund, budget versus actuals. And again, we are compliant in not overspending our funds. Page 200. About the middle of the page, on the opinion, the paragraph begins with, "In our opinion, the district complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements referred to above that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal funds for the year ended June 30th, 22. So we are in compliance there. Page 204. Here we have the summary of the audit results, and the very first item, we have an unmodified opinion, which is what you want to have. That means that you don't have issues. Down at the bottom, findings and question cost for, or financial statement findings, none identified. Findings for question costs for federal awards, none identified. And then finally, on page 213, here you'll find in the management letter the note on the excessive fund balance for child nutrition. They are required to report this, but we also have to report this to the Texas Department of Agriculture, and because we have a plan on how to spend it, they will not have a finding. They are happy with our response. Any questions on our audited financial statements?
If there's no questions, would there be any objections to moving this statement to the consent agenda?
Would that mean you don't want the audit firm to come in and speak on it?
No, it's fine. I mean, if that's...
Yeah, we'd have to leave it there for it to be a public entity that would have to come and speak on it.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I know we've moved it in the past, but I actually don't think that we're supposed to have an open meeting.
So, we need to have an
Yeah,
open,
open meeting.
yeah, okay. We'll just leave it. Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Barbrick, consideration of fund balance commitment for the Dragon Stadium turf replacement.
Administration is recommending that, well, currently, we have committed $40,000 for turf replacement, and that was done in 2015. When the board commits an amount, that amount must be used for what it's committed for, or only the board can uncommit it and use it for anything else. The original intent was to commit an additional $40,000 each year until 2025, when we had a total of $400,000. But that was abandoned at the board's pleasure at the second year. So we've only committed $40,000. Well, now it's been 7 years since that time, and costs have gone up to redo a turf field, and it can range from $500,000 to $625,000. So administration is recommending that we add an additional $585,000 for a total of $625,000 to set aside for future use when it's time to replace our turf field.
When you say turf field, you mean the football
The
field?
football.
What about softball and baseball?
This is only for the football field.
I understand, but are we planning on putting money aside for those two fields as well?
That would be the consideration of the board. What we did is took the intent at that time, if I'm not mistaken, because we had grass fields.
Yes.
So at that time, when the board moved for the AstroTurf for the football field, that was the foresight at that time to put that there.
Yes.
But it's the will of the board, and we would just have to make sure that we make the adjustment accordingly. Also know that this amount, the highest level of authority is this board that puts that money there. If we were to move that, because we don't specifically say football field, we just say replacing the turf.
Yes.
Correct? So if it's determined that the cycle of life for the baseball field needs to be replaced, then at that point, this board would make that decision, and then we would make the adjustments to make sure that we keep our commitment to all of our AstroTurf fields. It would be prudent for us to do that versus putting this lump sum in there, committed, and not knowing when it would be used for depending on which field. The most expensive turf field to replace would be the football field. And I'm not knowing the exact price, the baseball field, percentage-wise, would be less than it would be for the football field. So, and I want to make sure the board knows that this commitment, the key word on this line item is we do not have funds that are in the fund balance that are flagged as committed funds, which means that this body is the only one that can expend those funds or remove them and put them in another category based on this highest level of placement. So,
So that would be my question. If in fact, say, for example, we had the baseball field, and that got out of whack and we needed to replace that, we could take that money from the football field and put it onto the baseball,
well, we take the money from the turf.
from the turf.
It's, remember, we're not
Okay.
saying football field. We can go in there and say it's a turf replacement if the language needs to say that,
Okay.
and then we can keep it pretty general when it comes to that. Would it just be the semantics with language?
The administrative recommendation does name the Dragon
Football.
Stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it would, at the board's pleasure, you could uncommit a certain amount
Yeah.
and then place it towards,
And that's what I was
yes.
wanting to
yes.
get at. Yeah, we could
And
do
it
that.
can
if we
only
need-
be done through board approval.
So we're not planning on replacing it now. We
No.
just know that it's imminent,
Yes.
and we want to have the money
Available.
handy. Okay.
I may say that field condition is excellent for the time that we have been using it. I've seen it. It's in good shape. There are some holes here and there, but
As
everything
the
is
new
well.
person, do they play soccer on that field also?
Yes, ma'am, boys and girls, and
Okay.
also they rent for facilities for games, football games, soccer games.
Okay, so it's used for multiple.
Even though it's much been used often, it's still in a pretty decent shape.
Okay,
The age of that field will depreciate more than any other field. We use it for practices as well. Typically, you'll see a stadium, they'll have a separate practice field that they use, but because we use it for soccer, we use it for football, we use it for our practices, our drill team is on there, our marching team is on there.
Yes.
It's a heavily used field. So we would have to rely on the experts that are out there to let us know what is the lifetime of that field to make sure that we don't have any injuries when it comes to, a turf field is okay. It's interesting, when it starts turning, you'll start seeing injuries that occur, and we don't want to get to that point. We want to be prepared to address it. But I want to make sure that, as a board, you know that this money is not saying we're spending this tomorrow or the next year. It's, this decision would be made by the board that we're replacing the turf field, and the monies would be flagged there. This is part of the audit conversation that we've had, is that we've got to have funds in our fund balance that are tagged so that it's just not sitting there unrestricted. And what we have is that we have unrestricted funds that are sitting there that have no commitment, and we have an obligation to the community to let them know that we have some plans for these funds in the future, and then these possible plans could include the replacement of a football turf field. So.
And this money would not earn any interest if we have it
No.
separated like that?
It-
We would.
That's part, all of our money is part of that big
Okay,
bucket,
all right.
and so yes, it does.
Okay.
And I want to add that part of the fund balance things that you're seeing tonight, there are political groups out there that don't like to see large fund balances, and they want to take it. So far, they have been unsuccessful, but they are continuing to try to get legislators to pass something, that can take undesignated fund balances. And so we are taking efforts to protect our fund balance. That's part of that 11 million move, because we want to use these funds the way we determine and not give it to the state to use how they determine.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just thank you for your efforts.
Do we need to move this one to consent?
Are
Or do
there
we need a
any
discussion?
objection to putting this one on the consent agenda?
No, that's fine.
Is that fine? Okay. Thank you. Consideration bids for the Nacogdoches High School press box paving project. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, President Irvin. If I may, again, direct the board's attention to page 222 in your board book. On October the 18th, 2022, the district accepted bid proposals for Nacogdoches High School Stadium Press Box Renovation Project. We have submitted the bids in your board book for your review. The project received 4 bids, with Paragon Construction being the low responsive bidder at $1,877,859. We have reviewed with Mr. Army Curtis, Mr. Ralph LaRue, all of the main subcontractors being proposed to take, and we take no exception to their ability to perform the work. It's noted that Drury and Wheaton had the lowest bid at the opening, but subsequently asked to pull their bid due to an internal discrepancy on their part. Note that the project includes bond work of the press box renovation and capital work of paving the stadium parking lot and driveway, and the front parking lot of Nacogdoches High School. This paving striping scope represents $984,268 of the bid. I'll break it down. The press box renovation, $1,887,859. Encore electric pole removal, $5,000. Furniture, $5,000.
Furniture.
$7,000.
Sorry.
$7,000.
$7,000 on the furniture. I'm sorry, $7,000 on the pole removal. Furniture, $7,000. Scoreboard control relocation is $5,000. Fiber data extension is $25,000. We have architect and engineer design fees of $113,270, and an owner allowance and contingency of $100,000, making the total project cost $2,143,129. We'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
One regarding the scoreboard controls relocation. What are we talking about there?
Just up in the press box area, there's going to be a little bit of redesign
Right.
of the space. So the controls are going to have to be moved from just one room to the other. As well, in this design, it also includes a visitor's press box on the visitor's side, which will also include windows that look back toward the girls' softball field and the practice fields over there. So we'll actually have a visitor's press box, and we'll have the remodel of our press box.
The board will remember originally in the conversation when we were with another entity that was looking at putting the bid, it was more than this because there was a lot of, it was a complete tear down and creation. And so what we're doing is operating within the confines of ADA compliance. We're also allowing our home stadium to get more room so that our home staff can use that entire space and not have to share that space with the visiting coach or the visiting teams. My understanding, Mr. LaRue is here to speak to it as well, is the visitor is not a complete new build that's there. It's a modular unit that would be put on the visitor's side with a roof right at the 50-yard line so that our visitor team can use it. I've had some dialogue also with Chief because of safety and security. That's why we're looking at something that has the visibility on both sides so that we can also protect our visitors then when they're here, looking at the parking lot and keeping our visitor parking secure. Also providing some state-of-the-art opportunities for our drill team to use that field and be able to have a bird's eye view to coach our drill team. And security reasons also for Chief, a bird's eye view, so when we hold a track and field event at that crow's nest on the visitor's side, you can basically have a 360-degree view of all the field events that are held over there, as well as the events that are held inside the track. My understanding, based on my conversation with the chief, she's pretty excited that it gives her that opportunity of security on so many different levels by doing this. I don't know if Mr. LaRue needs to add anything additional to it or any questions that you might have.
Well, I like the idea. I really like the idea of being able to utilize it just more than a press box, but for observation and safety. I think that's a really good thing to do, given the fact that things have changed in our schools and stuff. So for me, that's like a really selling point of doing this. So.
If I share some information,
Yes.
I think it's a great idea, because for those of you who didn't know or have never been in the press box, first, ours is small, very small currently. Normally, there is a press room, radio room for both teams, visitors and home. There is coaches, both coaches on a scouting group, filming crew, bathroom, public address. It is very, very crowded, and it's very narrow. Sometimes I can go through it. Two people my size cannot go at the same time. So it's very necessary. It's time. Plus, it's the most common question asked every time you walk in any sporting events. When and how?
They're anxious. I have a question. Sometimes I don't read well, and so I just have a question about the term renovation. So we are looking at over $2 million for the renovation project of the press box, and I just want to make it clear in my mind that when we say renovation project, that is including this idea of a separate visitors thing, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. I knew you were sharing that vision, and I just wanted to make sure we weren't just committing the renovation of the old, and then we'd like to in the future see this other. This is everything.
And yes, absolutely. And the thing that Mr. LaRue is working with is there's a fine line that deals with ADA. And there's a certain percentage that all of a sudden it can really become an exploding cost when you start addressing an ADA issue. So they're actually providing the update that it's needed for our teams to have without kicking off an ADA issue that requires us to do something additional. Mr. LaRue, if you can you address this? I believe in our initial conversation, some of the renovation that we talked about is the inclusion of a center bar possibly that goes up on the bleachers so that our community can actually, because right now, walking up those bleachers, it's a hazard. And so there's certain things we can do, and there's certain things we can't do, and that's one of the items we did talk about in the renovation for our public to access the full stadium.
Yes, and we are looking at, in fact, there's a prototype being made as we speak. The stadium, as we all know, is not standard, and we got to just custom fit a railing to make it safer for the guests to get up and down.
Yes. And that's included as well when we're talking about the whole retrofitting.
We ought to have a bathroom on the visitor side for their
No,
press
sir.
box.
No.
No, sir.
I see what Army has submitted, and then I see what Paragon has bidded. So is it two, or which one will we go with?
We're going with Paragon.
So the cost will be 1.8 million.
Well, all the figures that Mr. Martin included that goes with that.
Right.
Yes.
Paragon's just the
Okay.
construction.
They're
and then
the
there's
main
furniture.
contractor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's,
Yes. Paragon is our main contractor, and I listed out like the
Okay.
Encore pole
Yeah.
removal, all that stuff goes with it. I think it's also important that we point out that we're also repaving all the parking lot of the Dragon Stadium parking lot, as well as in front of the high school. As well, we're relighting the whole Dragon Stadium parking lot.
Yeah.
So there's a huge amount of work going on back there as well.
and-
Sounds good.
And very importantly, the Encore lamp we're getting rid of those poles out of the middle of the parking lot, which are also in the way of the band drill team, the band practice field on the parking lot. So the band will get a complete new, well-painted practice field with no light poles that they have to march around.
This will be a benefit to our baseball program as well, because when they light the whole parking lot, you can be there at a certain time, and that backside of that parking lot is extremely dark. So you're going to see a lot of update that will be there. So when you see that, Leah Beth, that it's all of that when we're talking about it. Yes, ma'am.
I just, the thing for me is, we talk about these projects, and then we talk about getting the low bidder on it. And I just want to make sure that if we're giving the low bidder that contract, that we're going to get the same quality of work that we're getting from people that might be charging more. That's just my comment, because I know in the past that I've done contracts and stuff. It's just, they tell you they're going to give you everything you want, but then down the line, it doesn't happen sometimes. So I'm just hoping that, we get people that are going to do us a good job and for what we're paying them.
And we do, and understand that this is the lowest qualified.
Yeah, and I understand, yeah.
Not the lowest, but the lowest qualified is in best value are
Okay.
very important words that we use.
Good.
And we've checked all their subs, or their people that we've worked with. You never know until you get into a job with a contractor, but
Right.
we feel like they've all checked out.
Okay, thank you.
So do we want to move this to the consent agenda? Do anyone have an objection? Everyone's okay. Thank you, Mr. Maru. Okay, next, the consideration of bids for the McMichael Middle School Stadium restroom project. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 225 of your board book, administration, on October the 26th, 2022, the district accepted bid proposals for McMichael Restroom Addition Project The results are in your board book for your review. Based on Mr. Curtis, Mr. LaRue, and other construction staff folks, we're recommending that we proceed with the project as follows. The project received 2 bids, one with TCMC Commercial LP, who was the lowest responsive bidder at $330,000. We've reviewed the main subcontractors being proposed and take no exception to their ability to perform the work. In addition, we've worked with TCMC through value and engineer process and identified a savings of about $7,500. The district TCMC has done work before. They remodeled the transportation center as well as the District Support Center and Fredonia project right now. So the district is very familiar with this contractor. The total project cost, we have TCMC's bid of $322,500, architect and engineer fees of $10,500, and an owner allowance of $30,000 for a total amount of $363,000.
What would be the contrast in the amount as it relates to the portables that we're getting for the baseball field? How much were those?
What was the cost for the portable units? Okay.
200 and some thousand for each, I
My
think.
recollection was for 2, I think it was 261 or 264.
One of the benefits and that we would have with a stationary building versus a portable building is we have students that are out there and they're on, and it's a class, PE class, and they need to take shelter pretty quickly because of the weather. Instead of having to run all the way back into the building, then they have a place that's there. It's also if we have an event, and a football event or something that's out there, and somebody needs to take shelter, you can pack them pretty closely into a facility like this, where we keep them out of harm's way. Say, for instance, it starts to hail or something is going on. We don't have a single structure out there at all in that football area. The biggest, Mr. LaRue, the biggest cost when we're talking about the project for the restrooms, it's not the actual structure itself, it's going to be the plumbing
Yes.
that we're dealing with, correct?
I think that was my question about in the past, we were demanding that to have, and they said the plumbing would be an issue and the
Mr. LaRue?
drainage.
Yes, plumbing is a big part of it, and as is the building cost, they're about split.
Okay.
And I would like to point out that we bid this project twice. The first time, we didn't get any bidders. This time, Mr. Curtis paired it up with the city restrooms for the city parks. 2 separate projects, but we bid them on the same dates, had the pre-bids on the same dates. So we actually got some interest for people to, to look at it and construct it.
So Coach is right, the plumbing is, you're going to see a good portion that's going to be the plumbing.
Certainly part of it, but the building costs are,
Yeah.
it's a brick and mortar restroom complex.
Okay.
Long-term ADA ramping.
No, I think it truly is good to have it fixed building in there. Like you said, during the practices, the kids need to run to the restroom and come back, doesn't have to go inside the building, especially after school. And where are they located?
If you're looking at the stadium with the school behind you, they'll be off to the right between the service road that goes down,
Yes, sir.
between there and the bleachers.
That would be easier for the sewer lines, connections and all of that?
Yes.
That's great.
President Irving, as well, Board, what's exciting is because of our due diligence with the bond, this is still out of the bond. This is, what we're doing is working it there, so we're not looking at the revenue coming from any other area. Same thing with the press box. In those additions that we're looking at is the cost savings that we were able to look at and deflecting from with ESSER funds for the HVAC has allowed us to be able to address these items. So just so you're aware, the funding mechanism, we're still holding accountable to the obligation to the community, and I'm sure the community will be really excited to know that these are items that we are able to meet with regards to the bond.
I have not been in McMichael's Fields, most recent. Do they have a ticket selling booths?
They have
No.
nothing.
Oh, gosh.
They have nothing out there, other than a porta potty.
Porta potty's been there for 20-some years.
Yes.
Okay, if no other questions, any objections to moving it to the consent agenda?
I have no question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LaRue. We will now have consideration of campus targeted improvement plan. Dr. Hill.
Thank you, President Irvin, Board Member Superintendent Trujillo. For the 2022 State and Federal Accountability, BQJ was identified as a comprehensive school. And so we are required to participate in the Texas Education Agency Guided Interventions for School Improvement, which involve two different steps. We have to develop and implement a targeted improvement plan, and then we have to submit the plan to TEA as well as get it board approved. So we started working on this plan back in the summer-ish, probably back in, I guess it was August. I don't know if that's considered summer or not, seems like it. And as you've read through it, you'll notice that it's based on some effective standards, if you will. That's based on a document called the Effective School Framework from Texas Education Agency. You probably heard me talk about it in past meetings. As you've read through it, you'll notice that there are 4 total cycles that will take us through the end of August of '23. So we've just finished or just completed our first cycle. In fact, we're meeting tomorrow looking at cycle 2. We have already submitted it to TEA, and I want to give kudos to Ms. Amber, and as well as her admin team for writing a stellar plan. When we met with Heather Volery from TEA back in October, it was actually October the 12th, there were no revisions to the plan. She said it was one of the best she'd ever seen. So well done to Ms. Wilson and her team for doing that. We didn't bring it to you at that point because it was beyond getting it on the October board agenda. And so TEA knows we're bringing it to you guys this month for approval. We just basically have to have a final check mark from you all. So as you were reading through the plan, you'll notice that it was based on, or the focus of it was on effective instructional strategies as well as high-quality instructional resources. There was an emphasis on unit planning, lesson planning, as well as observation feedback from the administrators. Our focus subject area is mathematics, as well as specifically looking at the areas of TELPAS. The student groups that we really want to hone in on are the economically disadvantaged students, African American students, and as well as Hispanic students. So the essential actions are what you see that we've really highlighted on. And so there are several different essential actions within that ESF or that Effective Schools Framework. So we had to engage in a needs assessment at the campus level, going through each of those, and Amber and her team, as well as myself and Dr. Corley, settled in on essential action 4.1 and 5.1. So that's why you'll see on some of the pages more narrative when it involves those two actions, if you will. So I'll entertain any types of questions or any questions you may have about the plan.
You know me, I'm going to have a comment.
I do. What you got?
I'm making this comment for the public to hear, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
This was a great plan. I loved it because it just spells everything out. But I particularly liked the focus on the training for teachers. And for instance, in there, even addressing the desire for 100% buy-in from the teachers. That is so important, that they have 100% buy-in on what they're doing. But, and I was trying to find it real fast while you were talking, but I couldn't, but I bet you can come up with it. I also want to state, because I know that a lot in the public are very anxious about BQJ and how we're doing, and how can we improve and make this better. But you have on there, it's like 9% are brand-new teachers, but over half have 5 or less years of experience. Do you remember that? It's like 51% or something? And
Just a minute.
this is important for us to keep in mind, that we have so many, really, they're considered new teachers. If they have less than 5 years' experience, they are still learning how to teach themselves. And that's why I was so pleased, so much of the focus was on equipping the teachers and training them. So this is really good. Well done.
And we had to partner with a third party, and they call it a VIP. I'm sorry if I'm at a loss. It's not very important person, but it's a VIP according to
Yeah.
TEA. But while Solution Tree wasn't on the VIP list because we had a working relationship with them, and they knew the embedded coaching that we are doing with the campuses, TEA was perfectly fine for us to continue that relationship, because the last thing they wanted was for us to introduce yet one more perspective in, so.
Oh, that's good.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah.
So, yeah, that's, so we're.
So we're
super-
continuing on with, yeah, great.
We are, yes, ma'am.
Any other questions, comments? Are there any objections to moving that particular item to the consent agenda?
No, that's fine.
Thank you. Back to you. We will now move to item F, consideration of revision to the employee compensation plan. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, Board, I would like to explain a little bit about that motion language. We would like to change it before Thursday for your consideration on Thursday evening. The administration is recommending an employee shortage incentive for 2022-23.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't.
The administration is recommending an employee shortage incentive for 22-23 in the amount of $101.47 for every employee, full and part-time. As a Nacogdoches ISD employee, they've been required to perform additional responsibilities not contemplated at the initiation of the school year due to the onslaught of employee exodus in education resulting in teacher and staff shortages. And desiring to recognize and to continue to motivate hard work, the administration feels committed to recommending to the board that we give $101.47 per employee. The funding source would be ESSER funds. The total amount would be $112,000, again, coming out of ESSER funds.
Total amount will be?
$112,000. The incentive would be paid out in December pay run.
And this is every employee?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So every employee will get just over $100.
Yes, ma'am.
Full-time employee, not.
It is an
not
interesting amount.
substitutes, not
Full or part?
substitutes with it.
No, no, sir.
Is the
To
district,
Ms. Pitcock's point, the interesting amount.
Yeah.
Let me speak
Still
to
trying to
that a
wrap
little
my
bit.
head
so you'll
around,
know.
like, here's 101 and some change. Merry
When-
Christmas.
When we say $100
Yeah.
to the employees, it's truly going to be that amount. Because when you do the deductions, depending on the staff, then it comes out to be, some would be 98, some would be 95. And so staff would be coming back and saying, well, I didn't get my $100. So what we did, and it takes a tremendous amount of work.
I can't even.
For Lisa and her staff, and I really want to I want to share my appreciation for Lisa and her staff to arrive to, when we say this, how can we actually say it is that amount?
Okay.
And so we can make any deductions or allowances that are there, and it be truly that for every staff member in the district. So
Thank
to your point, that is an interesting number. It is an interesting number, but I celebrate Lisa and her staff for doing the magic crunching to see what
Okay,
that
that's
number
great.
had to be.
That helps my confused brain.
Yes.
Well, does that include Ms. Holly?
That includes Ms. Holly.
If Ms. Holly can get it, I think we all do. Thank you so much. Do anyone have an objection to moving it to the consent agenda? Coach? Good. Thank you. The board will now conduct an executive closed session to discuss the items posted on our agenda pursuant to the following provisions of the Texas Open Meeting Act as allowed by Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.129. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open session. It is now 1:16. We will not reconvene into open session before 1:30. Thank you.
My husband's body changed fine, because I've always been
Well, I bought a bill.
The board is now reconvening into open session, and it is 2:00. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Okay. This time, the chair will entertain a motion.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
It has been moved and second. So ordered.